The second method to solving quadratic equations we will learn is using the square root property. Let's take a look at example 1. We have x squared is equal to 25. So if you ask yourself, what number times itself equals 25? Yes, 5. 5 should be the first answer you come up with, though there actually is a second answer. Think about negative 5. What is negative 5 times negative 5? That is also positive 25. So both positive 5 and negative 5 are solutions to this problem. Now, how do we show our work here? Remember, solving equations means we're always using inverse operation. So the opposite of multiplication would be division, the opposite of addition would be subtraction, and here, the opposite of squaring a number is taking the square root. So we take the square root of both sides, which gives us x is equal to plus or minus 5. What this means, it means 5 and negative 5. So that's what that means right there, okay? Just section that off. But this is the short way of writing your answers. When doing these problems on ALEKS, you would actually have to list 5, comma, negative 5, your two separate answers. Now, let's go on to the next one. If we try to take the square root of both sides here, what number times itself gives you negative 25? You might try negative 5 times negative 5, but realize, no, that becomes a positive. And then you might think, well, negative 5 times 5. But those are two different numbers. It's not the same number. So you can keep trying and trying, but you'll never come across a solution here. So in this case, after we try to take the square root of each side, we find that there's no number times itself equal to 25. So therefore, this is no solution. In other words, for your purposes in Algebra 1, you cannot take the square root of a negative number. You'll learn how to write that solution later in Algebra 2, but for now, it's no solution. Let's start by solving this equation for the x squared. So let's get rid of this minus 100 by doing the opposite, the inverse, which is plus 100 to each side of the equation. So what are we left with here? We're left with, after this cancels out, we're left with x squared is equal to 100. Now this looks more like the earlier problems. So let's take the square root. That's the second step. Take the square root of each side, which leaves us with x equal to plus or minus, what number times itself is 100? 10. So it's both positive 10 and negative 10. Now in this one, you can think of this as a two-step equation with that extra step of taking the square root. So let's start by adding this 40 to cancel it out, which means we add it on the right side as well. And that leaves us with 2x squared equal to 40. Now we take the we continue solving by now getting rid of this 2. Let's divide by 2 to cancel out the 2 here. Divide by 2 on this side as well to keep the equation balanced. That gives us x squared is equal to 20. Okay, and now when you try to take the square root here, what you'll notice is we do not get a whole number answer. This time we have to use our calculator. So I've shown you on our calculators how to take the square root, and I'll remind you how to do that. But let's take a look at how to do this on the phone, because I know some of you need to access this at home at times. So if you're trying to take the square root of 20, you type your 20, and then you would take the square root. So you see that your answer is x, this time it's approximately, since we're going to round, and two numbers after the decimal, so the nearest hundredth, that's 4.47. Let's take a look at our fifth example. Our first step here, as I wrote, is subtract 5 from each side. So let's get rid of this positive 5 by subtracting 5 on each side of our equation. Remember, on the left side, we subtract to cancel out the 5's, which leaves us with now x plus 2 in parentheses to the power of 2. So we're simply bringing this down, equal to 35 minus 5, 30. Now, our second step is to take the square root of each side. We're trying to get rid of this square, power of 2, and we do that again by doing the inverse, which is square rooting. So when we take the square root, this side simply becomes x plus 2 because the square root cancels the power of 2. And on this other side, we get plus or minus. And now let me show you how to do this on our calculators. So if you're trying to take the square root of a number, you use second, which is kind of like shift on a computer. Second, and notice that green radical symbol. So the square root symbol is right above the x squared. And we press that. That gives us this x squared, or the radical. And we now type in our number, which is 30. Hit enter. Notice the answer didn't come out as a decimal. So to fix this, you go to mode and you scroll down and you press enter over a classic. So we select classic by pressing enter. Now let's get out of here by pressing the clear button and let's retype that. Second radical, that's 30. And the square root of 30, enter, is 5.477. So if we round to the number to the nearest hundredth, it looks like it might be 5.47, but the 7 afterwards tells us bump that up to 5.48. Now, in this next step, notice I did write subtract 2 from each side. While that is what we're doing, I'm going to use what I referred to as the drag and drop method earlier when solving equations. I want to bring this plus 2 to the other side of the equal sign, but I want to drop it in front of this term here. Okay, so keep in mind, when you move this over to the other side, this plus 2 becomes a minus 2 or a negative 2. And now let's bring down plus or minus 5.48. Now you have to do both answers here. So you have to do negative 2 plus 5.48. That'll be our first answer. And you also have to do negative 2 minus 5.48. So our two solutions are x approximately 3.48 comma negative 7.48.